Pe I would like to remind every one of ourselves to take a moment and cultivate bodhicitta motivation, seeking complete enlightenment for the benefit of all other sentient beings. With that kind of at least contrite bodhicitta motivation, we should participate in this discourse. I think Isla went a little bit backward. So we talked about selflessness of a person, dealing with that there is no such thing as an intrinsic self of a person. So we already talked about that with different types of analysis and reasonings. And so related to that is that there is no intrinsic mind. Right, we're talking about I and mind. Both of them go together with the selflessness of a person, and so we will look at that. So we went a little bit back. So we are on page 195. At the bottom of the page, the subpoint 2 reads, establishing that the intrinsic nature of mind does not exist either through this.
Nibati Dagua Rashimeva Timber Never Druber Tembani Bani Trashin Dagi Maina Dagi you a Karanju Dani Eva Maina Dagi you a Karanju Shivata Rigba Dinji Chibe Kanzara Himeva Truba Yoshi Truba Kibana Dagura Yutuba Ligbara Kiba Joro Then Dara Himeva Tobe Lord de Dagiwara Himeva Minzita Dara Himeva Tobe Lord Shiva Dene Dagura Himeva Nibicheve Gone Lokachakotanji Himeva the Lord even Jewish Rigbot Subamasun Sovos Telmase Punum Nama Punum Telmase Punum Soji Moboda Lesoji Leso Jundish Shunjidena Chava Tamje Lam Chava Tamje Lam Mar Chava Tamje Lam Chava Tamje Lam Mar Nam Rigba Gene Mive Teda Jan Rashimeva Jovnula Maje Paris and Jigdin Chavazana Yevaya Mingoba Tendos 어때 다다 랑심이 다다교 랑심이 사 다다교 메스 산이 메스고 랑심 메스고 그랬어. 그래서 다 랑심이 왔다고 되게 카도 무엇도 다교라이 뭐 누구요 뭐지 이나 다 랑심이 왔다 또왜 리바텔 때는 다교 봐도 가지고 좀 지와시나 사다미 다교라이 뭐또 제가 티서다 그래서 그거 무엇이 뒤지니 또 뒤고 뒤니 또 돈도 주셔야 리바텔 너무 다도 찍고 뒤에 범마도 이제 저희가 또서나 디네카라 이마고는 리바카보는 뭐지 서바스가 조가야 말스 어디로 디께서다.
So we are on back to page 195. At the bottom, it starts, and it's a very small section that just finishes on top of page 196 there. And so this small section opens up with a citation from the Fundamental Wisdoms Treatise, Mula Madhyamika Tsashe, which reads, when there is no self, how can there be mind? And unquote. So as Geshe explained, that once we really understand through applying the sevenfold reasoning, in Tibetan called Namdunji Rigpa, that there is no such thing as an intrinsic self of a person. In other words, a person or a self does not intrinsically exist at all. Okay? And of course, that very understanding or cognition, realizing the selflessness of a person, is not also going to cognize the selflessness of mind. However, if we shift our focus onto the mind and use the same analysis, sevenfold analysis and reasoning, we can easily understand or cognize the selflessness of a mind. Okay? So in other words, the point that's being made here, and Geshe quoted a citation from his memory, it's not here. Elsewhere, it is said that if you realize the ultimate nature of one phenomenon, but you could also realize the ultimate nature of all other phenomena. Okay? There is quotations somewhere. So as Geshe explained, that if we first deal with a particular phenomenon, let's say a vase or a pumbaa pot, right? And so we realizes or understands its selflessness. Okay. Now, by using the same logic or reasoning or analysis, if we shift our focus onto a pillar, kawa, right, we can easily, by the power of that reason and analysis and earlier understanding, we can also easily realize the selflessness of a pot or XYZ, whatever other things are there. Okay? So that's the main point, that by realizing the selflessness of one phenomenon, it doesn't mean that the self-cognition at the same time realizes the selflessnesses of all others, but simply shifting our focus onto any other phenomenon, by the power of that same logic and analysis and reasoning, we can easily realize and cognize the selflessness of other phenomena. So that is the essence of this this whole section here.
어디 가는데 다들 남들 리바스야 되게 다라 힘이 좀 대대는 다교라 힘이 조조리스 티마데 텔레셴바 봐 애는 범바다서 분노서 뭐버셔다 이제 시제 요새 강가다 봐 어디 리바티 그 카본이 봐 시에고 저랑 얘는 최대 힘이 또 저거 이게 양저양 레레카는 야 거로 힘이 주 리바레 티리야 아조가 요마리스오다.
In other words, this is the contention of this whole section, that as we become very familiar with and we understand how the sevenfold analysis and reasoning works, the Namdinti Rigpa, right? And so we use that and we realize the selflessness of a person or Kamsa, Purusha. Now we don't need to use some other reasonings. We can use the same reasoning to be able to realize the selflessness of any other phenomenon, anything that exists, right? Of course, that would include mind. Once you realize the selflessness of I through the sevenfold analysis, by using the same reasoning and logic, we can realize the selflessness of mind. And not only that, by using the same reasoning, we can realize the selflessness of a pot and attire or clothing, and the law of cause and effect, and the karma, and everything else that exists. So basically, as Tesla, tried to re-explain it, that once we become familiar with and we apply the sevenfold reasoning, to find out whether there is intrinsic self of a person, or Purusha, Kamsa, and we realize there isn't one. And so now we don't need to use some other reasonings or find a reason for every little phenomenon to establish that that is not intrinsically existent. By the power of the same logic and analysis, now we can realize the selflessness. In this context, lack of intrinsic existence of mind, of a pot and pens, and they didn't say pens, but pot and pens looks like rhyme together. Dress, clothing, and any actions we do, good and bad, the law of karma, and everything else. So this says, as you already know, that there are many different types of analysis and reasons that we could use to establish selflessness or emptiness in this context, same, But among them, the best reason to establish the selflessness of a person is this sevenfold reasoning or analysis, Namdingripa, that is first applied to an example or a metaphor of a chariot drawn by the horses, not by the motor vehicle. It might work as well, right? And so one is realize that a chariot with all the seven parts, really nothing is findable as intrinsically existent through this analysis. Now we apply the same application or reasoning to a person or a self, and we can realize how the self of a person doesn't exist in all these seven different ways, And so we can, realize that. And once we have that under the belt, so to speak, now we don't have to find many other reasons for every one of the phenomenon to be established as selfless. Just by the same logic, power of the same application, we can realize the selflessness of all other phenomena. So in the Buddhist metaphysical logic, an instrumental word is called rigde. Once you realize, understand one application very well, the rigde means do the same with everything else. It's like you infer from this, it can be applied in the same way to X, Y, Z,
Ningo ba ten so nipa shoda me ba drive riba shiva song les. Da kaza da go ni jida da me shui da me kaza da me ni shiva di kaza da me di she san. Da shoda me drive di kaza te shoda me de. Ka song ba la sa ko sa drive riba shiva song les. Tombo chemba nyesha shi go ni. She ye da me do shiva nis. Chemba nyesha lu sama lu sim je shi sa jora ba. O digo kanshi shiva tila kaza da. Lu ne gangba chimba. Lu ne gangba chimba me shezo song las. Lu si de kaza na. Si gangba laba na zo jera da de je di da. Lu si de doctor de ri mari ko shaji ma bo yari si o de ni stereos this. Shiva ne ti temba ya gi de mani shezo song de da ki shi da me shi da ji shi da je ba sha ka ni shi da me wo me ten do che ge dang ji la je juri ji go ni ye na ra ba dang chamu ni che dang ji ra ba la yong today ge ji ma tu gi sha me dang du cha sho sha me du zen ba da bu kun da dang to ma ni yin de be se du jin sha me sa be ra ba dang Tenzin be tseme tsema zishin tseme tenzin be se karza yutra da tenzin be se tenzin be tseme zishin tsema tabu lenji yinu Chui dangzi chara layang rigbe jeba sheni suzo rang zengi cheba ted nyam zemba kunda dang. Rigbe jeba shuwa la madhe par ngango shugi suzo rang zengi cheba zeba ni lenje ye no was. Kunda ni chubde gywa kone gyula ye la. Lenje ni chubde gyurma gyude. You got a so dear that is a good out in you didn't go down it. You didn't go to begin the other good out yet. You didn't mix it with Musa to a mention. Gangon shows the Lenji in ship. The Lenji the Kazaka Julia. Good out did that to the martyrs, she now did the martyrs. The country, Rilum and Jevashi was you did something to the matter. Sharda la so to Julia Kunda Sadi Yamara. What did he say?
Now we are on page 196 and we will move to the second subpoint dealing with the selflessness of phenomena or Choji Dharma in Tibetan. And here the caption reads, explaining the reasoning establishing the selflessness of phenomena, and this is done through looking at three things. And the first one is explaining the selflessness of phenomena through the application of four mindfulnesses, Tenpa Nyeshashi in Tibetan. Yeah. And then the rest we will deal with later. And so again, this section opens with a citation. There's a one-line citation which says the body is not the feet nor the legs ... So right, and so as Geshe explained, that body is not just one single entity, right? It has many parts. Body has limbs, and so the body is neither the collection of all of its parts or the limbs, nor is it, right, any of these individual parts, right? This is the part of the analysis we are looking at to be able to deal with the selflessness of phenomena. And so before we do that, here's mention of how, when we deal with what we call here translated as apprehension of self, usually I call grasping at self, right? Just keep it tight. We can, talk about grasping at self at two different levels. At the coarse level, right? Easy to understand kind of thing, gross level. Then at the subtle level, tamu, isn't it? At the gross level also, we can talk about the self-grasping or apprehension of self as that which is imputed. I usually call it intellectual one, right? And that which is innate or very natural, Tenje in Tibetan. With the subtle one also, we can do the same thing. There is the coarse level, right, apprehension of self or grasping of self, and there is the subtle version of grasping at self. So each has innate is yes, imputed. That's right. Yeah. Oh yeah, no. So okay, let me do it again. Right. So what I'm saying is that the apprehension of self, or usually I call grasping of self, it has two versions. Imputed, we called it kuntak. Kuntak means imputed, right? And Tenje means innate, that naturally arises itself. Okay? And Geshe said that. But in the text here, he talk about how the coarse apprehension of self, right, could also has the imputed aspect and the innate aspect, and the subtle one has the imputed aspect and the innate aspect as well. Yeah. And so it's important for us to understand the distinction between the kuntak, imputed one, and Lenjet, innately developed one. The kuntak, imputed one, which before I used to translate as intellectual grasping, is really something we hold on to based on some kind of a reasoning, isn't it? So for me, it's intellectual, right? And this is the good examples are in both Buddhist schools of thought or non-Buddhist schools of thought. Followers subscribe to all kinds of philosophical standpoints, right? Everybody has their own reasons, good or bad, right? And so that kind of what we call holding on to some philosophical viewpoint is good example of imputed version of grasping at self. And it only exists in the minds of those, who, for some reason, they said, okay, this is what I believe it is to be, right? And this kind of imputed view does not exist in the birds and the animals like that, right? They don't think through the reasoning like, okay, this is what I think it is, Yeah. But whereas the innate one, the Lenje, the naturally arising one, that is what exists in everybody's mind, whether you are educated or you use reason or you are a philosopher or not, right? It exists in the mind of the philosophers and the non-philosophers and the birds and all sentient beings, right? So that which exists naturally in the minds of every sentient being, whether we have philosophy or not philosophy or reason or reason or clueless, doesn't matter, we have the innate version, which is called Tenje, okay? So the imputed one only exists in the minds of people who can think some reason, do philosophizing something, and all that speculation kind of thing. So it exists in those minds or in such minds. Yeah. No.
There, Dharma yes, and the there that lose us some shoes or the lose so as it. So same shoes. Luna so Kazo yeah, the Kazo Keva. So as it did do yet. Simpson the dang on the change the Simpson Dharma. Then shows that in the mother. The magic Nagasa with the church in the mother, you don't tell shows with that. Shows of you do not lose some Jewish she could on the war. She said, me what tell me good do was that. But you told her lose some Jewish share. Did it.
So when we investigate, analyze phenomena, how they actually exist, so we're dealing with the selflessness of phenomena, in Tibetan, and here the first point says we are going to do that through the lens of applying 4 mindfulnesses, right? So the 4 mindfulnesses, as many of you know, refers to the mindfulness of the body, Lui Tenpa Nyesha, mindfulness of the feelings, Tso Tenpa Nyesha, mindfulness of the mind, Sem Tenpa Nyesha, and then mindfulness of phenomena or Che. Okay? So the body, which really we define in terms of that which has a shape and color and materiality kind of thing, right? The feelings are like I'm happy, I'm not happy, I'm screwed up. Geshe didn't say that, but that feeling, that is the feeling. And the same, the mind here really is a whole world in itself. And maybe some good examples are we can look at the mental factors, right? The semjung, right? The mental events, we call it, and the other minds. And then the phenomena refers to anything that cannot be classified as a body or the feeling or the mind. There are so many other things, like, for example, the space, right? Remember the unproduced phenomenon, Dumache, so it's part of the phenomena reality. So when we analyze every one of them, we are covering the whole basis, ground, isn't it? Phenomena, right? Phenomena means body and feelings and mind and the remaining existence. Yeah.
What did that because you shared use to us the same shoe hit. Or didn't you tell me the tin and do this year? Tell me the cars and tell me in Parata, change your lord, shoes or Yanda was Yanda was a can't make what I would get it that. Lose a simple here, tell me what that. But tell me that Yanda was lose because that never saw doing the dress of some of the Yabuda. Tabelam Gunya do whatever. That is so as they do the same, the Yaduja, yeah, you saw you do whatever. She's a shit with the simple shit, Chizang shit, Koyama Lam Guna Kodol Mego, Divasana Constantly Joya, Koya Judan, Yatavata Gizi. Music shit will make what it is. What is that? Carry the dishes is all. Carza. Teens was that. Sims said in Carza. Sound of it, sound of it, shut out, sound, sound it. Because Carza, how good was the young? I didn't know music so how good on the chart says you do.
No.
The music of the scene, those is that so and got that what I know sure.
No.
That didn't much do shoot of the in the Garak bed, Chat was to get Changos Garak Chats, children so speak. Social looks like the near Shan, she was the said the sound corner. The social is not just sound corner Ranjari, last of that corner Ranjari.
No.
Computer don't know the sound corner, those don't she does not do the fly sound is the corner yard, the Yamarati. She the computer don't know the Rina, you the Rina never do whatever. What did this is open? This is what it comes out. Red or carbohydrate, and the crop remote over to the last night, remote yard in the degree. The red double javina. And the quad is not showers, but on the corner at the painter. That did my say. Tabji so she did. And the quad he charged you got him, yeah, painter as nearly there, your mother. She simply Peugeot on the corner shan, no mother. She had a car was in the Chikwa, some of the Chikwa, Hashang Nanda. What that social Nanda, some corner moves at it, some Ransha mother young and high Yamara.
No.
She had Peugeot on the side young and doggies. What you know that? Simply because there was nothing. Simply you were so a Timana, you lower that you're off. Or take better this year. Some Koran shall Kawashi and tea show. 야살잖아. 안 누살 지나 지셔서 되죠. 지금에 sem코랑 우어도 종으로 돼야 이거 야 동아요 뭐 that's but 소가도 취하도 돼요 뭐 나고 다요 뭐 지마셔서 다요 어디서는 샘디 양아도 가르쳐나 지마디 그사 그 지마 로브라스야 유제를 가르쳐 그 다요 로브라스 왔다 거지 그 소라나시는 그 로브라리고 말아 그런 배웠을 미기 소라코라 배웠으네 지마 메레를 뭐지 소라 추니 그 장마리아스 게 여버라 그 샘디 되자 말아 샘코나 샤니 그 지마 추야요 어디 그 샘디 샤거라 그래서 샘이라지 왜서 왔어 되게 가지 샘이라지 지마 마고 되래 라지 왜서 왔어
That was quite a bit there. Don't worry, I got it all here. So we mentioned, 4 things: body, feelings, mind, and phenomena, right? These are the basis, for going round and round in samsara, or this could be the basis for us to transcend samsara or go beyond samsara, right? The bases are the same, So we have a lot of what we call distorted perceptions and viewpoints with regard to body, feeling, and mind, and all of those things, isn't it? And because of those misconceptions or distortions, whatever you call it, the Tibetan called the lokpa, means something gone wrong there, it's flipped. So we face a lot of issues, isn't it? And because of these distorted perceptions, we attach to the body and we attach to the feelings, and then we get mad, and then we feel aversion, and all of those things are related. So in order to counteract all such distortions, now we have to see the realities in a correct form, if you will. So by realizing the undistorted realities, now we can only counteract those distorted perceptions, isn't it? So that's is why we are dealing with these bases: body, feelings, mind, and phenomena. And so as in particular, Geshe used the example of mind, the same, if you will. So mind, is the basis for our being in samsara and going through all the drama ramas of samsara here, or it could be the basis for us to be able to, go beyond samsara. So if we look to define the value of the mind, so to speak, we could be defined it from the utility perspective, right? How we use it, isn't it? And maybe the value of the mind might go up if we use it to be able to achieve nirvana or enlightenment. But if you use the mind just to be mindless, I'm just kidding, samsaric, then its value go down, so to speak. So Geshe used 2 examples to illustrate this point here. And the first one is like a copper, like metal, right? The copper by itself doesn't have that much of value, so to speak, but its values can change depending upon what we do with that copper piece, And so somebody can use the copper material to create a statue of a holy being. Well, now the value goes up. It's a precious, isn't it? Holy image, Or somebody might say, I need some pots, okay? And so they can make the copper pot here. Well, it has some value. Yeah. Or somebody might use the copper, I don't see much value here. I might use it like a pot to vomit, right? Or maybe urine pot, let's say, Well, now the value goes down. It's the same copper, isn't it? Where we worship it, a statue, copper statue, and where we just, thresh it out. So that dependent upon how we make use of the copper. Or let's take another example of what we called, Geshe said, cloth. We mean the canvas, isn't it? You can use the canvas to be able to create this a very masterpiece of our art. Now the value goes up, how priceless it is, isn't it? Or we can use that canvas just to use as a duster, just clean or something. The value goes down. Bear with me. So it's the same thing. The mind is just the basis, and how we utilize it, and that's going to define its value. So it is the mind. Because of that, we are in samsara. Our mind is diluted, isn't it? And as Geshe cited from his memory, it's not in the text here. Luckily, I know that one too. Same Rangshin Veseva. The nature of the mind is clear light, luminous, isn't it? Chima namni loburwa. The defilements are adventitious or temporary. That's the great news, isn't it? Yeah, our mind is screwed up, really. But not its nature. It is screwed up, right, at adventitious fall. Therefore, we have a hope to be able to purify our mind of all the defilements, isn't it? If the mind is in its very nature defiled, then it's impossibility, isn't it? It's like we wish to make the charcoal into something white. Well, you can. The charcoal by its nature is black. You cannot remove the blackness of the charcoal until you destroy the charcoal and get rid of it, right? So we are not going to do that with the mind, right? So the mind, in its nature, is clear light and luminous, but is temporarily or adventitiously defiled by all crazy delusions. And so these delusions can be removed. They are purifiable and removable. And so that's why we said, let's do practice, cultivate the path to be able to counteract the misconceptions, the distortion, and realize the realize the realities as they are, and then we can change our mind for better, and then we can, increase its value and achieve nirvana enlightenment.
What is it that? Because Rangis in said, you did that. Tumum Gangapena, Soarabatina, Soa Dogyo, the Devasa, the Tanyas, wrong thing, Soaju, Judu. That's all Metabasa, and so you wasn't. She saying that. The Ganga shoot at you, she was. She said, today we are Kono, two more changes. Two more changes, damage, Tanzia, until that. So two more the wrong thing. Two more together, or G things. What the devil that Kono need to do, Chivashis and Kono need to Kadek, Chapter you do, Kono go Carredo, could chapter you Carredo, could Lido Carredo. What that did bear so that to choose the Cadet, so did something where I said, oh, this way the Roshi is made, and the Tabashi, she was.
So, with regards to like the body, feelings, mind, and phenomena, because we are into really investigating, right, their characteristics, the qualities, and how they actually exist. So we are looking at what we call Rangitsenyi, unique characteristics or qualities of every one of them, or the general characteristics, more kind of universal in some sense, qualities of every one of them. Now, if we use feeling, Sora as an example, and the unique qualities of the feelings are like pleasurable feeling, unpleasurable feeling, neutral feeling, neither pleasurable nor unpleasurable. But the more sort of a generic quality, and sometimes you might use the word universal, is that feelings are impermanent, isn't it? So now when we look at those, what makes a phenomenon unique, right? That is it's a unique defining characteristic, rangchen we call it, right? Specific characteristic, literally translating. And that which is shared by many other phenomena, we call it chichen, means generic characteristic, general, isn't it? So we said, okay, among these qualities, which one is more pervasive? Of course, we know impermanence covers a lot more ground, isn't it? And so this is how our analysis really looks into these general and specific characteristics or attributes of these things,
No, because so wrong things. What did they call a word of shell the Javashina? What church in the Korea and Metavasa, Yevasa, she Metasado, At times I get the get because I would go on treasure of Germany, turn their there, what did it ever say? Kono walk at it, go she let her she could do. Or that told yard do it. Koya Yaboso the Kadeso, do Jashi do that, Pondon Kadepon to us. Or tell the Jabba of Shannon, Jones about 6 years yet. Yards in longer she tells her. It is a course out. Champagne shall go see what I got you.
So meditating on mindfulness or cultivating mindfulness, Gom is meditation literally, means cultivating. So what it really involves is we are looking into what makes a phenomenon unique, right, as compared to others. It has some unique specific characteristics, or that it has certain characteristics which are shared by many others called generic characteristics, and then we will say, okay, what does it do? We look at the functionality of a phenomenon, then we can even evaluate it. Is it good or is it bad? It is beneficial or is it harmful, isn't it? Like that. So whatever are the qualities on the wrong side, so to speak, right? Then we try to get rid of them. We try to prevent them from arising. We try to deal with them and we counteract them. Whatever are the useful, meaningful, and the good aspect of the things, we try to adopt them, we cultivate them, right? So to be able to do that, the practice of abandonment and cultivation, Langdor in Tibetan, so we need the mindfulness, right, the Temba, right? Then we know, okay, this phenomenon, it does this. This is its functionality. These are its characteristics. These are the useful ones. These are the harmful ones, right? So then we discriminate or differentiate them, to get rid of all the unwanted things, and then adopt the wanted things, the useful one, and move on, so to speak.
What the Dadoni Shing Shakba, Chu Zimater, Long Dorjee Nela, Sherab Jene, Tembe, Mejevan Zimba, Nuba Mejevan Zin, and Job Digi show, Temban Yashasi. Shah said, Jordan Shah said, she was a. Said the Koran Guru Carredo. Sherako Chin, and the cook Karshi, and the Koya Long Zado Redo, Mato Zado Redo, Koran Guru Chawashin, or the rest in the hotel, finding ever need in the bay. Because Chevan Juga, the train to the Chevan Yashasi with that.
So we are on page 197 there, and Temba Nyesha. So Temba is mindfulness. Shak means to set it on or to place it on something. The Tibetan word shak means to put it on, right, to set it on. So before we set our mind on something, we need to use the sherab, where here translated as meta-awareness or wisdom or introspection, usually I say. Because introspection helps us to be able to, analyze, right, the realities. And we say, is this something useful, something I should adopt, something I should keep improving? Or is this something I shouldn't be doing, I should get rid of, right? So the meta-awareness or the sherab, wisdom, helps us to be able to establish that. So once the wisdom has established what needs to be abandoned, what needs to be adopted, now we put our mind, right, set our mind on that, isn't it? That's called setting the mindfulness or placing the mindfulness, literally, Temba Nyer Sha, right, applying the mindfulness to that practice.
What did that get so? Seconza, Dami Tumo, some aunt she with Temba Nyer Sha. Gunju last, that's a good day. Kaza Dami Tumo, Sena. Kansa Rangi Zee Donati. Kansa Dami Tumo, I see what that. Kansa Rangi may Kansa Dami Tenjo Mishamara. We said that Dami Tumo is Dami Tumo is the Kansa Rangi Zee Dons. The Kansa Rangi Zee killing it. Page number maybe Chipat of it. That she was killing her. Ranjat was the Chami Jibu and the Dawa. The good yard of that make what this is Timashana could the Geshe Gyeltsen Shamata Inza. In the Jawalian, Lesans of Navya Shamata Inza. She's a Koran, Ranja Kora Digis, Tabaris. Cooking married to Atrikayamari. She's a Lesa Sange Koran Gonsago. They do Koran Yungoi. She's a lady Naja Tigris. That Lesange the jig to go in. And Lesange the doing you get a card to go to system. And Le Mashiba Teva the Shiva Shusa was Doris. So was the data of Kelango at the Geshe Judo Shiva. Namja Geshe Masad, Namja was on that. And Shiruga, data was a killing or what you did killing it as well.
No.
Chitarba, they're doing education, she did killing it. Or the lesson go Gaza Kora, Tawara killing or that.
No.
Less of the Korasa, division to Korano. She's the conductors came here, I said Tawakera. Less on this and go to Korasa. Of the tag, Kaza Geshe is the Kaza Lesaga Karakesi, Jurame, Lane, Divin Yungoma, the Kokesi, Jordan, June of the Hichi was on that. And the late Siva saw Majiva Chair, the Tonga Mari. Kokesi Judas, so Kaza Hichi of Chikwadi Doris. She had listening Konan Divin Young Konan Lesa, choosing Lesa, leasing Divin Young to take the Maris, Namba Sishin to Treshiwara.
So within the Buddhist schools of thoughts or tenets or Siddhant, Dubta, a generic presentation of selflessness of a person is there is no self of a person that is self-sufficient and substantially existent, isn't it? And that if not all Buddhists, but accept it. So that's the generic perspective or presentation of the selflessness of a person. But when we say that there is no intrinsically existent self of a person, that's a very unique perspective from the Prasangika point of view. Not all Buddhist schools of thought will accept that, so relating to that, as Geshe say, in the non-Buddhist schools of thought, my footnote, usually we refer to many Hindu schools, not every thoughts in the world. That was the context. So they do accept, many of them, that there is self of a person, right? Because they do believe in the rebirth. They believe in the law of cause and effect, okay? And they don't deny that. And so for them, how karma can bring results and you experience of karma, it only makes sense if there is a purusha, a person that exists permanently, isn't it? So a person has to be chame, partless, and chikpu, singular, right, independent, and has to be takpa, permanent, isn't it? He said if the person not permanent, then we cannot explain how the karmic actions can bring results and the person will have to be accountable for that. Understand? It's the same person. They said person who created karma, and that person is permanent, and therefore he or she will experience the result of the karma because there's no problem. They are permanent. With me? Yeah. So they said that, because Buddhists do not believe in, a permanent self, then they said that you are really violating a lot of cardinal aspects of the karma, isn't it? And such as that, you never experience the result of the karma that you didn't create, okay? Or that whatever karmas you have created, they simply don't go wasted. You are accountable for that, right? Because Buddhists believe in that. And so this non-Buddhist schools tell like Buddhists, that's your acceptance, Now you are saying the purusha of the person not permanent, so how can you explain that, Because when the person dies, well, that's the end of the person, then all the karmas that person created is a free karma, You're not going to experience them, right? So all these issues come up. Remember we talked about this some time back. And so from Buddhist perspective, why they got into that kind of a Pandora box, if I can call it, is because they have not been able to conceptualize and explicate what is called momentary changes or disintegration, isn't it? How things, change from moment to moment, kijima, right? And yet, all of the things undergo momentary changes and disintegration, but a continuity is maintained across these moments of the changes, isn't it? So because of that, on the basis of that continuity, Buddhists say we don't have a problem. The person who created karma has been momentarily changing, but the continuity of that person exists across all these moments and lifetimes, so therefore he or she is responsible for all the good and bad karmas, right, created. You with me? So these are the issues related to that, what we're discussing here. So we are on page 197, and the bottom of the second paragraph, it reads, the general characteristics are meditated on in this way. Conditioned phenomena are impermanent, in Tibetan. Contaminated phenomena are suffering, and the phenomena are empty and selfless. Right? So these are accepted by the Buddhists. Maybe in some school they might explain a little different here and there. Apart from that, the Buddhists subscribe to this, what we call the seals of Dharma there. And of course, here they cited that this is coming out of treasure of knowledge, right? We call Abhidharma, here treasure of metaphysics, they translated the Abhidharma Kosha, but of course it's also in other Buddhist texts as well, And so in the next paragraph, third, so from the same text, Abhidharma Kosha really talks about how we need to reflect on the antidotes to counteract certain distorted perceptions, cognitions that we have. And so distortions we have are called apprehensions of purity, sangva, happiness, deva, permanent, takva, and self is ta, right? And so we have, as we said, we have a lot of misconceptions or distortions or whatever you want to call them, wrong perceptions with regard to, let's say, body and feelings, right? And the purity means that which is unclean, we think it is clean, or that which is impure as being pure. So that is distortion. So we need to see the reality to counteract that. And the happiness is that which is actually suffering. We might consider that as happiness, real happiness, right? So that kind of distortion there. And then that which is impermanent, we just feel this is like a permanent thing. It has been there forever, kind of thing, since I was born. Actually, I didn't say that in my footnote. So that. And then that which is selfless in nature, we attribute self to that. So we have those distortions, right, within us. To counteract them, we need to think about the antidotal applications of practices, right? So to counteract, like seeing that which is unclean as clean. So we have to see its uncleanliness, the repulsiveness, the yuckiness, right? That we have to see. And so to be able to counteract the second one, right, seeing that we're suffering as happiness, then we have to, right, be able to, see through the suffering nature of what we regard as pleasurable or happy, some happiness, and so on. So as Geshe mentioned before, within Buddhist schools of thought or tenets, Siddhanta, that we have 4 major schools, right? Vaibhashika, Sautrantika, Chittamatra, and the Madhyamika. And the lower schools, whatever realities they present, right, those are stepping stones to be able to realize, understand the higher ones. But those are relatively what we call the coarse level realities, and not that they have gone wrong all the time, but whatever explanation is there is still not the subtle one there. So as Geshe mentioned earlier, from a generic perspective, we believe that there is no self-sufficient, substantially existent Purusha or self of a person, isn't it? And by realizing that, we are able to counteract, right, the coarse level, gross level of apprehension of self or the grasping at self. And so the Vaibhashikas and Sautrantikas believe in that. They believe that there is no self that's self-sufficient and substantially existent. And they said you have to cultivate that path, that insight, so that you will be able to get rid of the apprehension of the self, And they're correct in the sense that it's only dealing with the coarse level one. Now, in order to get rid of the subtle apprehension of the self or grasping at the self, then one must realize, according to Prasangika, the emptiness of the self of a person, isn't it? Without that realization, this other realization is not adequate. And so why we have this kind of differences coming along among many other differences? For one, that Vaibhashikas and Sautrantikas, they really don't talk about what called cognitive obscuration, Shantideva, isn't it? It looks like that's none of our business. We want nirvana. Here's the nirvana. We're going to go there, right? Whereas Prasangikas, while we think about beyond the nirvana for yourself, but enlightenment, we have to deal not only with the delusions, but we have to deal with the cognitive obscuration. So therefore, we have to deal with the subtle, nagging thing there. So that requires the realization of emptiness of intrinsic existence.
Okay, teachers love this source. Chembanyasha goes doilo to matang lung to matangness. Sumbe kapsos. Kunzake number jen lumezo so dungo so gombatang. Tonongje number jen nuzo so rashi maybe so don't you go to Nika sonde se. Then doesn't mean luchi ni kaso se. Luchi ni kaso PG Shiva, long time belly. The time is all Pumbo, Lune, Sugi, Sugi, Kong Zimba, Shiva, Loy Jet, Motion de Mishi, Yinju, Pumbaso, Shingjo, Tie Nani Nagi, Nambacha, Kan Chimishimba, Tadu, Shesoda, Young, Chuyang Tao Diva, Lude, Nangada, Songso, Nyane, Ti Lule, Nangada, Timba, Yashaba, Hugo, Soda. Lude Mongi, Tajin, Maumba, Shimeta Taya, Mingudo. One the Shimeta Kanya, Mini de Hizo, so Tishan, Soa Chinikasu, Sunaribuchi, Shiva Changbali, Choju Simbati, the Soa, News and Deja, la Jeve, Simji the Nishibuji, the Tadaki, Deja, Pala, Pomo, taking the Jade, Dungin, Yungshi, Shedonza, Shiva, Tanyam, Demo, Shiva, Namja. Yungshi Jawata, did David saw the Medava Shin, Dungin saw Sungu Shin, she saw the here, sure, Yanda divided. So Nua, Raptemba, so Lishi, so Po, Shishi Dada Usawa, so Dada, Kebanam, Tremba Dada, Nyawasha, she saw some sim. Chenyika Kunzu Changbale, Usun Semne, Bochi Gundam, Sonde, Mineba, Jenny, Jujin, Jumbo, Semne Longdam, Sonde, Rundu, Rahi, the Sonde Shaw, she saw the young Usun Semne. Nanaimi, Chirunaimi, Nigayami, Mimiso, Usun Semni, Sugmeva, Dedimeva, Taba Meva, Hizo, Songs, Church, got Geshe Chamali, Dushimida Taba Indi, Zaus Satang Dabu, Zigbeda, Hing Zeni, Nimu Shizu, Shime Chonghe Dabu. Ring me to, she saw the Hian Nanga, Xia, Tenny, Keva Le, Da, she Tenny, Keva Lale, Da, she Shadi Dene, Kone Uma, Carson, she Shwa the Shozo Kundu, Da, she. Tene one door me uso. He's also Bataros. But there, that can't get Lute so to ya Jordan, that can't get could meet up with you. Tamba country, she don't tell Mahoma go Karshi does. But there is so the Luzo taxation. Or to go at the Tremanisha go to that is this goes.
So Geshe read page 198 and part of page 199. And the second paragraph on page 198, it starts with reference to an anthology of training, which is the Siksha Samukcha, or I translate as compendium of Bodhisattva trainings usually. That's the same text. And so which really does acknowledge that we need mindfulness with regard to the conventional attributes or the features of body and feelings, such as uncleanliness or the suffering nature. Those are the conventional attributes. But we also need mindfulness with regard to the ultimate nature of those things, which is the lack of intrinsic reality existence. So it acknowledges those two types of mindfulness is required. And then as Geshe just explained a little bit, what we find being discussed here is our analysis or investigation or application mindfulness involved investigation is like in terms of feelings. For example, say, so we want to investigate how do feelings arise? Where do they come from, isn't it? And so when the feelings subside, where do they go? Where do they end up, isn't it? And then how do they come back again in the future, kind of arise, right? They arise and then they cease and then arise, right? So we're looking at the production and the cessation of feelings and then the arising of feelings like that,
Well, that share you got the loser symptoms of the going to the Tomba going at the Tony goes to the share as Jidan that Lu Dame Tomo goes at Tony will go on Mawaya, Drum the share the Mida. There, she is in machine, Java later. She done with joke one, share down in Joama, Dembe, Jambe. Yun kena tunga tini yula luji de nyawa sha tiki ta chemanya ya tumo da dame tumo ja ju shi jana chemanya gumza shi ju yo she ta dire me yo sha ran shi zhuwa khansa dame chamo de shi dame chamo ja ni she na shi jo ri de shera lu ti karza there's a shitly so shit. Think of so that you just love you comes over in the stone hills and shares. So the Tony Jana degrees. She thought that Damira was the charge and the Kazaka the Gaka Yamarisco.
So in between these two pages, 190 and 199, we have a lot of citations from different sources there, and as Geshe sort of highlighted, that when we practice mindfulness or applying mindfulness or setting mindfulness, whatever we want to call it, Tembanyesha, it can be of different types, if you will. We can apply mindfulness to the a generic understanding or presentation of selflessness of a person, right? We talked about mention, or we could apply the mindfulness with regard to the lack of intrinsicness of a person. That's more of the ultimate nature of a person, because both of those things are mentioned in the Bodhisattva trainings, compendium of, right, anthology of trainings there.
Oh, dear, because Nippon is still Mutuba Goma, Jamania Shata, Goma Namla, Shila, Yin, through Yunayam. Love you sauce. Love you Lengar Shivatar, Mutuba Goma, so ye, so Shinedam. Jamania Goma Gombe, so Zadon. Deman zole jang tedar xie do, cheba nesha xi jitsun ba lama shuna yue la. Tenyi ba na tik jing, tik ba song ji, sonam shungu yin xie yi nos, da yue dos. Yin xie ya, da lama shuna me yi sarwa. Lama shuna yo ma re, lama shuna ma do, cheba nesha tenyi ba.
Chaman Shamway is good.
Always
Lamshul Mashalamash. So we are on page 200. Geshe read a little bit the sub-point 2, way of meditating on calm abiding, shamatha, and special insight of vipassana. And so right in the beginning, there's mention of how mindfulness can be applied to both cultivating shamatha, calm abiding, or mental tranquility, special insight, or lakthong, vipassana. And so when we talk about the genuine mindfulness, or the real, however you want to say it, right, the actual one, Nelma in Tibetan, so that actually is found once you have what we call entered the path, isn't it? Those who have not yet entered the path, right, they don't have the real or the actual or the genuine mindfulness, we can say. So we will stop there today. So when we talk about, it's almost like who has got a real thing, a kind of mindfulness, right? Then we only talk about those who have already entered the path. That's a technical term. I know it requires explanation. I just translated what he said. And we will stop there today. And first we would like to go to our Dharma friends in the cyberspace, and then we'll come back. No, then we'll come back. Yeah.
So Geshe just said that there is not genuine mindfulness in those who have not entered the path. Mm-hmm. Okay, but here it says that there is also genuine calm abiding and special insight in those who have not entered the path.
Okay.
So it sounds like they're two different things, but if they have even the union of calm abiding and special insight, mm-hmm. those who have not entered the path, then definitely they should have also mindfulness. You see, in the middle of the first paragraph, after way of meditating on calm abiding and special insight, mm-hmm. in the middle of it, you'll see there's a quotation from Treasury of Metaphysics.
Right. This is there's a semblance
yes.
of the four application mindfulness in those who have not entered the path, but not the real one.
No. But continue. Right. So they are okay. Mm-hmm. Continue.
There is also genuine calm abiding special insight in those who have not entered path. Yes.
Okay, and yes. So they seem to be contradicting.
Okay. I think he might explain. He did not go there yet, right? But okay. I think you are. Yes, your questions looks a very interesting one. So Geshe did not get there yet. Stop. But I could ask that question, and it's okay, right? It doesn't matter, right? Yeah.
Stop just before that.
Right. Sure. The gang that day, and that Zam Shah again. The Koran details Mangian laws to what the Gelder the storm and all. It again, and then Masung rest, Lavin, but then the Korat Chiva, that they to what the Shucha like Roge. Another gang got a summa Sidukanlia, Lama Shulia, Temba Nation, where the Yom arrested Sung Roge. In a Tanda Pesa di Takaran Nalia. Lama Shulia, and a Shinet al Hakdon Roage, and Shinet al Hakdon singing the Bayon Chocolate love the Wage. Even any Shinet al Hakdon singing the Bayon Chocolate, you know, when it's an Temania singing some young Congress to us, and what I get to what the matter or in a Tangi Shusha or in Baggy. Can't that dish you are? Can't say so. But the Lama Shulia, Shinet al Hakdon singing the Bayon Chocolate Steed Wage. That Shinet al Hakdon singing them by Yebi in our Wage, Lama Shulia and Temania singing them by Yom over the culture race.
I did that. This is a take was so you some of the tres ego in the Jinjira. Take my member Tabatoni, Jim, my window. Take you in those of the New Summer Sequel, so today.
I let the Temania Yomale, Aline, the Carso or Shinet al Hakdon Company in Jimmy did the simple way of Marwagi.
Oh, no, she never thought of that because Lama Shugumarwa.
Lam Shumarwa, you do somewhere simple like Yomarwa. So since you asked, right, Geshe say, but he hasn't gone there yet. So he, at this point, what Geshe thinking is maybe that has something to do with the requirements of the paths of the initial, intermediate, and advanced level practitioners. For example, there's requirement for aversion to samsaric suffering, we call it renunciation, right? For the intermediate one. So their mindfulness is tied with that, you know. Whereas in order to have a calm abiding special insight, you don't have to have that necessarily, you know. The same thing for others like that. Okay. Yes.
Hi. We have been talking about the grasping of the self of a person, the jigta, and today it seems we're looking more at grasping at the self of phenomena. To me, it's the same grasping. It's not a separate and distinct.
Same belief or different belief? Is
Well, the object is different, but the mind itself, the grasping mind, is
Oh,
the
it's the
grasping
same.
mind. I think to me, it seems like we're just giving a different label to the jigta. We're giving a different label to the one for person
Okay.
because maybe it's just messy and it
Sure.
needs a lot of work. But can we verify? I don't think it's
Sure.
a separate and distinct mind.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
뭐랑 간디 쉬어야 되다 배제 테스트 탄예기 책임에도 가장 먼저 게 직다대 셰브로 와게
자,
직대 신유다 직보 망고 셰로 와게 강사기 다를 샹으로 와게 다 되는데 망체의 최고 당진 가서 고시거로 와게 지대 간리아 다 단다 최고 당진 당 먼저 직다 라이셔로 와게 되고 민 딱다르 가가 마도 가서 거 유디 카페와 마도 지게 인주 셴바 거라 찍바레 가래래서 직다 최고 당진들 직다 랍초거래
저 당진은 지다 나쇼 말이야. 맥배고는 샤고라.
라래
강사 맥바도 뭐 강사 맥세 다서 강사 다.
엔델
당진
델
다 때문에 부모가라서 강사 많이 걸면야 그 당진에서 가래. 쉬이 당진.
얘네 직다 라이데 강사 당진 마시 고구마를 보게
직다서야 강사 당진부터 야 말이야.
저 고구마를 보게
야 말이야.
얘네 다 단다 셴바데 그 민도다데 최고 가자다 당진다 강사 다르면 셴바 코란 제다 셈 싱엔디 셈 찍라로 와서 랑자 찍바래 카가래서 그러게
라.
강사 그 당진의 싱엔기 셴베 셈데다 최고 당진의 셴베 싱게 셈 지어로 와 셈디 찍바 찍냐래 그냥 셈 카가라 가래서 디 셴바니데
아니 강사 당진에서 쉬이 당진에서 그래.
어디 셴 어디 당진인 지어로 와게
人生卡卡的，没有卡卡的对吧？
알레 셈 셴바니데 카가 니 찍고 그러 봐
啊，这没有卡卡现在那个人哪卡卡的，卡卡的。
Okay, so when we use the word transitory collective in this translation or collection, jikta in Tibetan, that only is referred to the, what called grasping, apprehension of a self of a person. We never apply it to the apprehension self of phenomena. Okay? So these two graspings, the apprehension of the self of a person and phenomena, of course, they are posited from the objective point of view in one way, right? One is a person, one is a phenomena. You know what I mean? And so Geshe said those two apprehensions are not the same. They are different, two different apprehensions or two different graspings, let's say. Right? Apprehension or the grasping of self of a person, apprehension or grasping, because I'm using both words, because I use the only grasping, never say apprehension, because it's here, so I have to stick to the text here, translation. So apprehension of the self of a person, apprehension of self of phenomena are two different apprehensions. They're not the same. That's the word.
Okay. Now I'm thinking of it from a systematic point of this. The actual mechanism, mechanistic, the actual mechanism that grasps, it's a completely separate mechanism,
Or the same, right?
or is the same?
Okay. 아래 이네 게임비게 가르쳐 그래다 그 유경원에다 게 강사다 최 타대샤로 와게 이네 곧 비게 다도 진단지요로 와게 진단의 피네수 랑시도 번난게 요네 진단기 그 대세 잡단데 찍고 찍냐로 와서 그 낭단데 이제 최 랑시도 번난마다 강사 랑시도 번난
체시 카카서 뭐 진다 체스 카야 말다 카다 주 집어 지고 봐.
그래.
이거는 저거.
Right. Yeah, mechanism of the process is the same. You're right. Because things appear to intrinsically, and the objects are one is phenomena and one is self. Yes, yes. Yeah.
So when it's looking at a person, we call it the jikta, and when it's
Rinpoche
looking at
don't want
phenomena, then we just call it.
I don't. Yeah.
Follow up to that question. But actually, I realized that it's not exactly the same. There is here explanation of innate course grasping at phenomena.
Yes.
Okay, maybe you can look it up on page 196.
Okay.
In the paragraph that begins with the explaining the selflessness of phenomena. In the middle says, thank you.
Okay.
Somewhere in the middle says, there are innate ones, and this talks about the innate
Mm-hmm.
coarse grasping
Mhm.
at the substance of phenomena.
Yes.
Remember, in the we talked about that. So in the parenthesis says, like apprehending as separate substances, the macro objects that
Mhm.
are constituted by partless minute particles,
Mm-hmm.
which are asserted by the two realist schools,
Mm-hmm.
and the source of knowledge that apprehend them. So what they that grasping, innate coarse grasping at substance phenomena refers to the apprehending as separate substances, the macro objects.
Mm-hmm.
Separate from what? What is the
Mhm.
meaning of this? Is
Oh.
it separate from their parts?
Okay. Separate substances, the macro objects that are constituted by partless minute particles, which are asserted by the two realist schools and source of liberation. Okay. Within the coarse apprehension, several phenomena that are imputed, blah, 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 blah. The innate one is da, 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 da. Okay. So what is separate from? That's your question, right?
Yes. So there is a coarse apprehension of substance phenomena,
Mhm.
and subtle one, right?
All right.
The-
Yeah, I'll check this out. Yeah.
So
Uh,
this
yeah.
particular refers to
Alright,
the innate
alright.
course.
All right.
What are they separate from?
Right, sure. Gentagi di karsa ore chue temba nesha ki subject go chu roage.
나
Chue temba nesha ki subject go chu roage. Di kalia ani karsa ore lu di ani kangba mare karsa ore jiglai she roage. Di khadu de di shege roage tanda karsa ore chue ge tangzin la roage. Chue ge tangzin la ya chara ni yores roage. And sorry, chög tangzin li ya kunda ge zimba ta ane lenje ge zimba ni yores roage. La roage. Che je ane lenje ge zimba de li ya ane gen di shi do khare chame khada ke du chame di odi gen de she chunda. Da di inji na nge phyogen na lo gen tak da ting butan da chedo ni ge roage. chög tangzin lenje di 가르다 타데서 유의전 타데서 가르쳐 어디
나
제도니가 롤이야 최기 당진 현재대로 와게 타데서 랍자 유의전 타데도 집에 쓰고라 가르쳐 어디 땅에 빼서 뒤 말하게 뒤측 다다 랍도 보면 오게 니 이나 갱 다 챙겨는데 대세 시켜라는 게
근데 쉐이던지
최기 당진이야 군다제 요레스 현재 지어로 봐 군다데 샤스로 와게 다 현재 지어로 와게 다 현재 되면 현재 간대절라고 그렇게 대세 쳤는다
생계에서는
최고 당진 현재
차지사 유전 상마다 그런 강가 심지어 차지사서 주가 유효도 그 들리 현재에서 그래
말이 얘네들 당진 현재 겐디 당진 현재디 가서 뉴 참에 사바기 유전 타대베 지금 거봐
뭐 들 현재 말이 군다데 그 뉴참에서
말이 내 현재 지셔게 디나게 현재 지셔게 현재 배치사로 와게 디나로야 아니 뉴 참에 사바에서 와게 다음에 내 같은 쳐보면 개인의 툴을 예배나로 와게 제도 얘기 룰을 쓰고 와게 당진 현재로 와게 당진 현재디 간대질 사고
뭐 뉴참에서야 뉴참에 지역들이 계셔들 현재에서 뭐지 이 군다데
그렇죠. 만 에네다 디샤스로 와게 개인의 현재디 간대질 고고 오르다
생계에서는
만만 디 현재의 천시
현재에서 이제 다 제가 가서 차지사 주소 요된 게 되게 현재에서 있다
다른 마다게 디 가서 제도니가 롤게 최고 당지 캘린그로 와
쉐이던지 켈랭 말이 가사 담으면 당시만
그러니까 true realistic school. What school is this? A Bible said that something?
Yeah, that's the way basically, yes.
Yeah, that's Geshe said. That's
뭐
seems like a
다른
wrong.
당시 뉴트라서 쉐이던지 락바시고 쉐이던지 락바 쉐이던지 뭐 인식이 말이
알로 쭉 당지
제 제르코니 쉐이던지 락바 뉴트라 집어도 쉐이던지라고 말이
알로 쭉 오케이 가서 쭉 당지 락바디 컨텐츠 시작해서 그냥 뒤타라 지금 가서 봐.
뭐 뉴트라면이야
아니 이게 군다로 와.
실 군다레 쉐이던지 말이 실 군다데 인식으로
알레 아니 현재 샤야 말로 와.
생겨야 말이 뉴트라 저게
So I don't know what went
Yeah,
wrong
but-
here. Right, because I don't
That's
have
not
the-
important about the
Yeah, okay,
realist.
okay.
That's separate.
Yeah, yeah.
Simple. The question is, what is the definition of innate course expansion of selfness is a phenomena. That's basically what it is. For example,
Right.
apprehending chariot is different from its parts. Is this an example of that innate coarse grasping at selfness, a phenomena?
Yeah, sure.
That's basically what this refers to. But
okay. 알라 코란 디 젠데서 다기 먼저 싱대 남등 릭발 쳬베 싱달을 빼 자위나 와게. 싱다디 다 가서 넘버 2 르체네 아니 타테바치 아니 다 젬바이난디 가서 고래 디 가서 겐디르와 렌제 그 당지 디 차더라서 랑기 연라 넘버 2 르체벌레 타테바치 여바 젬바이나 와게.
렌제 차고 제바신 지나 렌제 차고 고다 차고.
로 I didn't
고다
Geshe thinks that if some of we feel that when we analyze the chariot, the 7 ways, we feel as if there should be something existing separate from that, the 7 parts, right? If that belief has to be imputed, he doesn't think it is in it.
okay, but without analyzing, just grasping at the chariot as separate. We're talking about innate.
Oh, okay.
Just grasping at the chariot without analyzing as being separate from its part.
Okay.
Is this a case of innate
one, right.
coarse grasping itself?
Sure. Right. But this is right. Mada majebe kabla shingda rangi yala chokwale tade do yobaji zimba yinar wage. Tadi ane karso lenje zimba revesa. Mada majebe shingda de ranga chokwale tade baji yobaji zimba yinar wage. Di lenje zimba chakar vesa. Mada majebe gi.
마다 마지막에
yala gi le tade baji zimba di lenje chakar vesa.
싱다 연하데 그래.
shingda ranga chokwa yala le tade ji yo samna mada majebe wage. Di zimba di lenje chakar vesa.
마다 마지막 타제 징게지 그래. 마다 마지막 타제 징게지 요 이지말 그 연하 타제 징게지 싱다도 연하니 카가서서로. 싱다 연하니 카가시스도 마지막 카가서 싱마로.
마다 마제베긴 딘데 싱라랑이 양라레 타데베지 요르 삼딘데 지바 용총 말해.
저야 말에 사타져서 그 제도로. 싱다도 연하니 카가리스 거라. 다 거기 싱다저 카가이 제도로.
Geshe feels like, this doesn't seem like a possible thing. Like without analyzing, thinking that apart from the parts, right, there is a chariot, right?
But don't we usually, naturally, innately grasp at things as different from their parts? When you look at the table, you grasp at the table, and you think of a table naturally as being different from its parts. Or without even thinking, you assume there's a separation between the table and the parts and the mind, like there.
맞아 남주 짐바 딘데 끼게 말해서 쪽제를 차샤면 쪽제를 야라 망고 요르와게 마다 마제베 삼데 저거 쪽제 세겐데 코라코라 랑신 그룹 등에 지고저 와 개장 레드가 딱고디 야라 탐제를 타데베 개장지 딘데 짐베실 리게 말해서 상조라
뭐 조세들이 조세 코라 가족직 들이면서 조세 토마도 강바다 디저 삼노탄지 시드니 들군다마 요마라 아니
맞 삼타게 맞게 랑신게 딘데 쪽제기 야라다 요르와게 담이게 통고 요르와 이네 짐바지인데 가라 야라 디데 탐제를 고 타데베 쪽제지 요베 정한절 남지 알로 샤게 요마르서
들 차죠
딘데 어디 렌제 마르베스 볼다
딜링게
다게 디싱다데레 딜렌제 샤고르와 고 마다 마제신 싱데 야라 강갈레 로와게 고 타데베 싱다 요르스마 딜렌제 요쇼고르와
마다 로즈이샤죠 싱다라 시르바 지야데로 샤다 예나 마데오 코라 도조 예야지
어디 렌제로와
딜다 렌제
I think it's a matter of like this. Sometimes it becomes a semantic thing, right? How in Tibetan, how the English comes over, like yes, and then but yes, now he feels that where you said earlier about the chariot, right? Without analyzing, right? Although it has all the parts, but from our grasp, in it point of view, we think there is a chariot by itself, right? So that is in it. Right? Yeah, that's in it. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. All this technical. Minutious. Let me see. Okay, one more question. Otherwise, today I've been told to recite all the long pujas, so I can take only one more. It's a new practice. We'll recite all the long prayers of our gurus. No. Okay, then we will do it. Then again, kuji shabde shende ringa tsama korona so can jogging again. Kaso gyawar mujeda. 잡질라들 좀 강하게 신된 기회가 쉬어와게 결혼나서 그냥 떼스 골거와게 So now we are graduating from the page colored booklet to the big white colored book put together. So people in the cyberspace, maybe you have access to the website, you might have downloaded it. If not, I'm waving here because you can see me. This one. Oh, we have I think prayer requests. Probably some people need prayers. Yeah, sorry. That need a bit longer, so be patient. Yeah.
Alexopoulos, Khazintari, Sinangavitari Jogila Tronsha, Kongicha de Tungmeda, the near Sende, Win, Van Ming, Dang, Jung Ding Wang Sarva, Neja, Tromba, or the Sende Namla, Tumenara Nanshueta, that the Nitzel and Demba, John Stevens, Liver Cancer Neverisha, Kongicha, Nishisinda Yansha, the Tungmeda. The ani tunica lam kange tushine kange sech do ani tungme mutune narana shwe susha. Prayer requests this week include, or for those who have recently passed away, include prayers requested for Chrisanthi Alexopoulos, who passed away on May 18th, and then Nguyen Van Ming and Jung Ding Huang also recently passed. So please keep those three individuals, along with all of those who have recently passed, in your prayers and dedications. May they be free from all suffering and purified of all negative karma accumulated since beginningless times. May they be reborn with all precious freedoms and endowments. May they meet the Dharma and a qualified guru and quickly achieve liberation and enlightenment. Prayers requested for those who are still with us include prayers for John Stevens, who is experiencing end-stage brain cancer and is bedridden. So please keep John Stevens in your prayers and dedications. And then prayers are also requested for Tunika Lem, who is undergoing physical and mental distress. Continued prayers requested for Tunika. Along with John and Tunika, may all sentient beings be free from all obstacles, hardship, and negative karma. May their wishes and prayers be fulfilled. May they be guided by the blessings of the three jewels, and may they experience everlasting peace and happiness. So before we do the prayers, I just wanted to let everyone know that the new long life prayers have just been posted in the Zoom chat there. So please download those and refer to those if you can on your devices, so that you have them for those of you who are following us online. And we'll be using those. We'll be using this new booklet from now on. So please keep hold of it.
Omanim beme uri ngewa ndiye nyodo da Jere Sewan, Rubjo, Dova, Chi. Salang Bai Sho, Toje, Kunala, Nyombe, Jomden, Senzang, Tebe, Nendu, Donge, Dozo, Neze, Sanje, Menje, La, Bindu, Yayi, Chanze, de Om Namo, Bhagavade, Begaze, Guru, Bandruya, Tabaranzaya, Tadagadaya, Arahade, Samya, Sambudaya, Teat, Om Begaze, Begaze, Ma, Begaze, Begaze, Ranza, Samugade, So, Teata, Om Begaze, Begaze, Ma, Begaze, Begaze. Dom Begaze, Begaze, Man Begaze, Begaze, Ranzo Samugadi, So, Gawan, Di, Nudo, Da, Membe, Gavon, Dojo, Dova, Jama, Lewan, De, Sala, Gava, Shu. On page 3 is Long Life Period of His Holiness. Ramjan Yave, Sanzo, Malu, Ba, Kande, Jiang, Chave, Yuru, Ga, Seji, Gele, Kunjo, Yishe, Weju, Tenzin, Lame, Chonam, La, Daja, Dunshu, Tabe, Sude, Kanjen, Gombo, Tenzin, Jazo, Ye, Guzi, Meshe, Geja, Rabde, Shende, Lunje, Ruba, Chenje, Lo, Chuyin, Gunse, Kunda, Nyamjo, Dunje, Dejin, Yishe, Gyume, Tangme, Dendang, Denbe, Jingo, Do, Shawe, Yedam, Lazo, Tamze, Daja, Dunshu, Tabe, Sunde, Na, Kanjen, Gombo, Tenzin, Jazo, Guzi, Meshe, Geja, Rabde, Shende, Lunje, Ruba, Chenje, Lo, Bangdo, Yunde, Lunzo, Tende, Nawang, Rokam, Jazo, Dazembe, Penze, Dobju, Ngawa, Laye, Ramjam, Desum, Jawa, Tamje, La, Daja, Dunshu, Tabe, Sude, Kanjen, Gombo, Tenzin, Jazo, Ye, Guzi, Meshe, Shende, Lunje, Ruba, Chenje, Lo, Jigden, Sumle, Kange, Ngedre, Chodo, Shiwa, Namjang, Nobu, Sangme, Miyo, Gunsan, Kebe, Be, Teksum, Dambe, Chöje, Sona, Daja, Dunshu, Tabe, Sunde, Kanjen, Gombo, Tenzin, Jazo, Ye, Guzi, Meshe, Keja, Rabde, Shende, Lunje, Ruba, Chenje, Lo, Sibe, Tukun, Jomla, Cheba, Dendun, Ngusum, Jave, Yishe, Namda, Doje, Zhongla, Meje, Lidu, Pabe, Gendun, Tamje, La, Daja, Dunshu, Tabe, Sit, Kanjen, Gombo, Tenzin, Jazo, Ye, Guzi, Meshe, Keja, Rab, Shende, Lunje, Ruba, Chenje, Lo, Kaje, Xingda, Neyu, Duju, Tedo, Nyamja, Rube, Jinjo, Nianjo, Lamsang, Rubla, Doze, Nezum, Bawo, Kandu, Chonam, La, Daja, Dunshu, Tabe, Sunde, Kanjen, Gombo, Tenzin, Jazo, Ye, Guzi, Meshe, Ke, Shende, Lunje, Ruba, Chenje, Lo, Doje, Change, Kada, Chage, Minde, Rebe, Tedo, Nyegu, Dendang, Tenzin, Gyongwe, Tuze, Jin, Yishe, Jenden, Tenzun, Yazo, Daja, Dunshu, Tabe, Sunde, Kanjen, Gombo, Tenzin, Yazo, Ye, Guzi, Meshe, Keja, Rab, Shende, Lunje, Ruba, Chenje, Teda, Lume, Gyabje, Chonam, La, Shuda, Ningne, Gube, Sida, Mise, Ningme, Sungo, Rabna, Dazo, Kanjong, Drove, Gwenje, Ngawang, Losan, Tenzin, Jazo, Chok, Sangsu, Mishe, Minju, Mino, Shomshe, Yongde, Doji, Ningbu, Chir, Gewa, Jazo, Yome, Dakden, Ramjam, Gyawa, Gwenje, Zebe, Ningdo, Takbar, Songbe, Labjin, Chile, Kunben, Nobu, Ningbo, Sheba, Xixin, Lun, Tedu, Zongden, Gesan, Namge, Lujin, Yesu, Jido, Daru, tubden chudu gudo rabda gezen sishi zemo yuroji chana bimin chenla duzi dazo nyingi sonso dami kashin rube chebe rabnyen guisang jujo yazo tazin sho minjung seje gyawe chenla tende luwa mewe dage lasam dabe tudo je membe dungun de la nyundosh. Page 9, long life prayer for His Eminence Song Rinpoche. Shomshi yongde tsela wangyo ve geda dese chime pabe dubri tangson tembara manam mishe tabe ngobo tende tupson nyingbo losan gyawe shedu zinjong bebe labjingi tinle nambara gyawe genzen dengze chizun lama shabde doju kada kongde malu ba sensam gombe tangma lede kode niju gezen yonggu sungge zesan gyonjiri shabde minjung chezu zombe yinggo 담배 남들 시지 외동 로베 몸이 somla cheba 다데 마베 니마 샵데 토데 닝보 다와 된종 저바 체메 시시 참제 데 펜데 이게 변윤 다저 개변 제바 종제 샵데 로산 야베 토주 관계 제도 기베 되지 봄산레 준주 사며 렉세 생활 진배 남들 경제 샵데 돌라 대시 개전 동바르베 랭제 유드 내가 군사 공매 지양 배배 신뢰 대제 등등 제제 샵데 잠내 군조 숨기 진라 다소 된담 요와 매베 톱 군대 된대 로메 제다 멤버 내군 로버쇼 capitulated on page 13. 마완 다음에 군견 동화대 가리 종소 니다 세제 잠근 자와 니와 yap세제 당선 된지 마베 시바 된진 제베 인공 제베 세제 내군 창조 된도 롱도 탐제 베베 베윤제 뇌자 야즈 원도 샵데 퇴삼 공다 체즈 좀베 용조 유레 토베 냐케 롱리 대진 뇌베 벤데 토된 토리 다보 샵데 쇼 도나 공멘 제바 납다 된당 로베 펜데 좀베 륜도 주민 치베 진례지 개선 되제 된도 샵데 지진 라면 토제 멸람다 개선 되제 조존도도 제도 동바이 제다 면변 등 렌도 쇼 주고 타르데 on page 15 람잔 신게 공보 세바메 조도 남제 개용 저마 조조 제예 하조 탐제예 다된 미시 초게 모조 도된 제당 로상 자와 시로 덴반 제베 배윤제 타드 dü자 경계 신예 양주 년제 공보 소와 지된 숨근 차나 변면조 덴베자와 소소 타와 난다 최대 양다 랑바 로상 연된 배도 샤된 쇼 퇴종 야전 논진 양배 삼종 남주 창진 준비 공종 시라 송주 제베 덴베 나다 전부 샤데 제베 동아 고왕 모조 준비 리랑 시위 몸자 준비 등등 내세 당자 계주 신년 전부 샤 개별 랑도로 구제 제다제 준비 차라 예조 랑사 상변 리제 리고 이시 somden 신년 전부 샤데 태상 로란 자베 덴데지 면종 다주 장매 시제 밥진 제딘 덴드 배샤와 센덴 신년 전부 초선 야와 세제 첸라다 도된 담진 송면 첸레 다자 라상 다베 덴베 제다 멤버 등고 뉴도 쇼 창조 심조 렘보제 마제 보나 제 개와 냠바 매바 공내 공도 배와 쇼 동리 다와 렘보제 마제 보나 제주 개와 냠바 매바 공내 공도 배와 쇼 사시 베지 조시 매도 점 레라 링시 년대 연바데 상제 신도 매대 외화 로근 남다 신라 제바 쇼 강리 라베 고르베 신감 펜당 대와 마르 종베 제레스 왕 땡진 자초 샤베 시덴 바도 덴조지 예당 고로라나 만데라 니야 다야 민 제와 군도 양다 라마다 데메 쉐제 베라 론체 사다 론제 연데 랍조 도제 창게 고보 뉴르도 쇼